Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to my team selection video for Game Week 9. The wildcard is active, as you probably heard on the pod. So I'm recording this on Friday morning. It is a Friday deadline. I would like to get the press conference updates before recording this video, but unfortunately, that's a luxury we cannot afford with that short deadline. But if there's any major news that comes out from these press conferences or any major changes that I plan to make to this draft, I will post it in the pinned comment later on after the press conferences. So first up, let's look back at game week 8. Again, let's not spend too time here. It was a bit of a horror show. It was only 58 points. Overall rank down to 2.4 million. And there were a lot of issues with the squad. I didn't want certain players I didn't want to feel next week. I'd be necessarily be playing Dubravka away to Wolves. Porro, I didn't like. Reinders' game time was looking dodgy. Eze, again, I didn't like the 61st minute substitution. Salah has now missed 4 big chances in the last 3 games. So even if I did Salah to Saka, that way I couldn't really get Gabriel. I had blocked myself out. I had a potential Anderson injury to deal with. I'd be playing Dewsbury Hall and Reinders this week. It just didn't feel great. I had Cells issues there, Giyu. So I felt these issues need to be sorted, and hence the wildcard was activated. Now, first up, a reminder for you can join our Patreon. We're still doing an offer where you can pay for 10 months and get 2 months free. You can sign up either on patreon.com/the FPL Wire, scan the QR code on the screen, or sign up as a YouTube member. But I think a lot of you guys might find it a bit cheaper depending on the country you're staying in. You get Discord access, which has been popping with the wildcard discussions this week, exclusive content, Q&A sessions, tournaments, merch which we are working on, and much more. We have also partnered with Club, which is a gaming app you can play on your phone, which is completely free to play. There's no gambling involved. You can download it in any country. It's linked to real world performances, so it's a bit of interactivity with the Premier League also. You can join using the QR code you see on the screen or the link in the description. And all the data you're about to see is from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. You can support the pod by signing up using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen. Right. First up, let's start looking at fixtures at Always. This is how game week from 9, the outlook looks for the next 10 game weeks. Newcastle are right on top. Arsenal stay consistent now, especially now, even the run after game week 12. You can see the tougher fixtures you'd say over there is Chelsea away, Villa away to an extent, but even the run after that is quite good. You could conceivably hold your entire Arsenal assets for this period. Then you have Fulham, who have a decent run. The problem is only Anderson really you can invest in over there. King maybe as a sub. Chelsea, the run is quite good short term, especially you have Sunderland, Wolves, and Burnley in 3 of the next 4. The Arsenal fixture at 13 is the toughest one. Then 14 is Leeds. Bournemouth away isn't great. Then 16 is Everton at home. So the fixture all the way till 16, if you can take care of the game week 13 fixture, which is what I'm looking at potentially as a free hit, I think is quite good. Now, Liverpool, we are looking at the short-term run, which we don't like, right? Brentford, Villa, Man City. But after that is really, really good. Forest, West Ham, Sunderland, Leeds. But what I did notice when doing my research, that turnaround you see for that West Ham and Leeds in particular is 8 days. So what is going to happen is they're going to play West Ham on the Sunday, Sunderland on the Wednesday, Leeds on the Saturday, and then they have Inter Milan away on the Tuesday. So from game week 13, yes, we will want a lot of Liverpool players, but they're essentially going to be playing 4 games in the space of 9 days. So rotation and congestion is going to be an issue for Liverpool, and unless there are many injuries at that point, which makes certain players' minutes higher, I'm not even sure we necessarily need to go in on Liverpool. So that's a decision we will make once we get closer to it. Palace, obviously, the Arsenal fixture you see is a big juggernaut, right? After that is Brentford, Brighton, Wolves. Manchester United is in 13, which is again interesting when you want to free hit, because if I go with a lot of Palace and Bruno, they're going to have a lot of investment essentially in 2 fixtures as Arsenal, Chelsea, and Palace United. But after that, again, Burnley, Fulham. It's a good run. After that, SAR goes to the AFCON around like game week 16. So that's when we potentially need to consider diversifying our Palace players. Bournemouth, Forest this week is pretty much the only tough fixture where you would say, Forest is fine. The City fixture after is the only one you'd say, yes, I don't want to play Senesi. You can even play Semenyo in that one. The transition games will probably suit him. After that is pretty much a good run. There's not a single game you can throw a hat on where Senesi is necessarily a bad pick. Everton, the fixtures are good in the next 3. I like Ndai, but right after that is Manchester United, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Forest, and then he goes off to the AFCON. So the fixtures after 12 aren't really that fantastic for Ndai. Now, Manchester United have already played the predicted top 4. That's Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea. So naturally, the fixture run will be a bit good now in the short term. But again, it's not the best. Brighton is good. Forest under Sean Dyche. Spurs, decent defense. You have Everton, Palace, West Ham, Wolves. So it gets better around game week 14, 15, 16. And you remember that congestion period I was talking about? That's when somebody like Bruno is really useful. Something else I want you guys to pay attention to is now the promoted teams towards the bottom of the sticker. Leeds fixtures are slightly better than Sunderland. Now, if we change the sticker to next week, because I think I pretty much ideally would have liked to wildcard in game week 10, but my team had issues I needed to sort out, right? So I'm going to look at a game week 10 outlook as well. Newcastle remain top. The fixtures get even better because, like I mentioned, from game week 14 is where the sweet spot is for Newcastle. They play Burnley twice, you play Sunderland. So potentially, I think 14 is really when we need to pivot to Newcastle. You could argue even 15. You can't get transfers. Game week 16, you're going to get load of transfers anyway. I suspect that's where we'll be going with our Newcastle players. Palace goes second, so strong fixtures. Liverpool fixtures naturally jump up because again you get that game week 19 fixtures against Leeds thrown in. Arsenal remain consistent. City also go up a little bit while Chelsea go a bit down. But you see at the bottom over there, Sunderland and Leeds still around the bottom. Leeds go lower than Sunderland now because Leeds get the West Ham fixture in the previous game. Now, some players. This is how I shortlisted them. Now you see Haaland and Mateta. I'm a stats guy, right? Mateta, if I see these chances, some players getting them really want to get these sort of players versus a Joao Pedro, who I think is a good pick. There's absolutely no reason to sell Joao Pedro this week, but clearly with penalty duties and this volume of NPXGI, I think Mateta is a good pick. Not necessarily for this week, but I think for the weeks going forward. In the game last night, he was the one who was taking all the shots. They did blank, 0 goals scored. Could argue he's becoming a bit of a Darwin in terms of his chance conversion, but I'd rather get a guy who gets these chances. Gakpo's numbers are very interesting, bit of an overinflation from the last game, but with Liverpool, I sort of want to wait for this period where they play Real Madrid, Villa, City to pass and then assess after game week 12, 13 where we are. But again, with that fixture congestion that is coming, will any Liverpool player start all of those games? I'm still not sure. Bumo's NPXGI numbers are very strong. Compare him to Bruno, 2.97. There is a significant difference over there. But Bumo does have the root 2 points as well, that corner, but I'm just feeling a bit more secure about Bruno's minutes. Bumo, I think, again, now does have that Cunha Mount Sesko issue. That being said, on the right side, not as much competition. So Bumo is still a great pick, but I think Bruno is worth the 0.9 extra with how good he is on bonus and DEFCON as well. Sa's numbers are again very good. He plays as a second striker. He did miss 2 matches, so keeping that in mind, those numbers are even more impressive. Enzo is now fit. 3.47 NPXGI for him is very good. I think Estevao, when he took the penalty, he said, I looked to Enzo and Enzo handed me the ball. So it's very clear that when he's on the pitch, Enzo should be the penalty taker. That being said, Joao Pedro wasn't on there. But I think now that he's taken 2 penalties and scored both, I think his spot is his to lose. Let's go back there. Sorry, press the wrong button. Semenyo, not much needs to be said over here. Good pick. And Die also, the NPXGI numbers are very strong, but the fixtures turn a little bit, and most of these assists he's supplying to Alpha better, which lowers his stock a little bit. Saka's numbers are very short term, but again, very good for what you do see over there. Timber's number very strong. Also, you see the Timber and Munoz are the only defenders who appear on this. And let's talk about the defense in this section. Now, in terms of NPXGI for defenders, the top 3 guys are significantly ahead of the rest: Munoz, Timber, and Calafiori. I do want to get one Arsenal attacker at least, so I won't be going for both these guys. Gabriel isn't in there, but Gabriel scores mostly from corners, so you won't see that. Senesi, what's interesting, he's still there for NPXGI. So what Senesi offers you is bonus point potential, a decent defense, attacking threat, and DEFCON. So Senesi really does tick a lot of boxes, and I really think I should be including him in my team. Similar for Munoz and Timber. These are guys I want alongside Gabriel. Richards is interesting that his numbers are so good. It doesn't really back up with what I've seen on the eye test. The NPXG is only 0.37, but the XA, I think a large part of it is because he's taking the throws now for Palace. That's why he's getting that potential. So again, a lot of points here, I think, in defense. Munoz and Timber really are in a league of their own. Now, DEFCON stats for defenders. This is from FPL Focus, sorted by DEFCON per 90. Senesi, right out on top. Mukiele in second. Then you have Anderson, who could potentially be back by around game week 11. A bit of a vague update from Marco Silva yesterday, so I don't think I can really go there. Richards, obviously really good, which of course now makes a decision between him and Munoz a closer one, right? There's 1.1, what I can do with that. Something I have to observe. Keane is another good option. I've had 4.5, but I can't find a rotation necessarily I really like with Senesi, and I'd rather get a good defender and play him every week since there's so many points available in that position. I looked into Mukiele also a lot. His past career, he's a guy who moved clubs. He moved from I think Leipzig to PSG, where he didn't really get much game time. There's a very good pedigree of player over there. He had potential to get into the France squad. Very good going forward. As Sunderland go to a back three, maybe he plays wing back. But I think he has good DEFCON potential and attacking potential at right back. Despite Sunderland's bad fixtures, I think they're a good defense. And in those games, I think they will prioritize defending, right? So DEFCON potential for him does look good. And so I think Mukiele is somebody I do want to include in my team over the likes of Rodon, who plays for a good defense, but the DEFCON potential there is a bit more unpredictable. First up, team stats. Now, terms, you guys have again seen most of these on the pod, so but let's just spend some time on them. In terms of XG non-pen, Palace are way out on top. City, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea. So again, top six guys I want to focus on. Largely, Everton numbers are also very good, but you see there are a step behind these top six guys. There's a dip from there from 12 to 9, which is quite significant. Bournemouth, you'd expect them to see a little bit better. Not that great numbers over there. In terms of defense now, Arsenal way out on top. Don't have any Newcastle defenders in my preferred draft. I would really like to include Pope in there. I think Thiaw is a decent pick at 4.9, but when all the defenders are back, maybe Hall is back, there might be a bit of rotation at centre back. These numbers are very, very impressive for a promoted side. That's what's giving me a bit of pause on the Rodon decision. But the problem is, right, with Leeds, they're actually good. When they go to other teams, let's say they go to a Fulham away, which they did already this season, they try to play, which is why hitting DEFCON becomes a little bit harder in those fixtures. Brentford's numbers also surprised us, as we discussed in the pod. Sunderland numbers are very good, again, but that has to do a little bit with the opposition they have played. Chelsea's numbers are worrying in terms of big chances conceded. We have played, I think, 2 games with the red card, and in the Forest game, we conceded 2 plus XG, but that was without Caicedo. But Chelsea, the problem is, I think it's going to be more 3-1, 4-1 rather than 2-0, 3-0. Even in the Champions League, you saw that. He won out comfortably, but still conceded and lost the clean sheet. These are some projections for Solio for the short term in terms of attack. See Liverpool right out on top, but I think the markets haven't really adjusted to it, or maybe Liverpool are just going to be back. Remains to be seen. They are accessible to me from game week 12 with more structures I go for. Arsenal fixtures remain very good. Again, the only tougher fixture over there is game week 13, which is a potential free hit week for me. Man City's fixtures, game week 12 is the only one I think need to look away from Haaland, maybe game week 14 when he's away to Fulham. So captaincy options in those two fixtures are quite important. And you look at Bruno now in that week, he has Everton at home, which is a decent fixture. Arsenal has Tottenham at home. So yeah, I could go either Saka that week or Bruno. Both decent picks. Similar to again what you saw in the fixtures, right? But the bookies haven't really caught up to Palace's strength, or they just don't rate them as much in attack. And I watched a bit of that Conference League game last night. The problem with Palace is struggling to break down deep blocks. They're very good in transition, but even yesterday, once they get other team went full deep block, they struggled. They did have a few chances. They did have 1.67 XG. Mateta took 6 shots, but this remains a bit of a concern for me with Palace. Mateta played 90, Munoz played 90, I think odd. Saar played 87. They're going to have so many European games. They're going to be playing against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup. Will that affect the squad? Will that affect fatigue? Will that affect performances? Can I commit to 3 Palace from now? Something I'm asking myself. Defense projections now. Arsenal for the next 4 are good. Game week 13, bit dodgy. Similar with Chelsea. 9, 11, and 12 are actually higher than you see for Newcastle, who I'm weighing up Pope against. Obviously, game week 10 is a little bit better. So I could get away with going with the Chelsea goalkeeper in the short term. I don't think any of the defenders are really nailed, especially I'm going to free hit in game week 13, right? Because on the other side of you get Leeds, and then I can segue to Newcastle. And I get some fixtures maybe in around game week 16. Apart from that, Bournemouth fixtures are really good, except for game week 10. That's when I need to cover Senesi. For that, I could go to Mukiele, right? Mukiele, that game week 20, game week 10 has 28% home to Everton and good DEFCON potential. So if I go with Senesi, then I think that coverage over there is a little bit better versus if I go for a Rodon. Because Rodon, I think in game week 10 is not as great. It's Brighton away. They usually always score in their own patch. The flip side of that, I might be looking to bench boost in game week 11. Rodon away to Forest could be good. But Forest have the new manager. I do back them to score. Sunderland that week has Arsenal at home. No clean sheet, but again, the DEFCON is almost guaranteed, right? With Mukiele that week. But again, I'm not going to let 1 week necessarily determine my decision. If that defender is going to be a very strong sub for me, I want him to have very predictable DEFCON, which looks like what Mukiele offers right now. The few drafts I want to discuss with you guys. So first up, let's discuss with the one I presented on the pod. Now this is 343. Doesn't have Senesi on it, which is bugging me a lot. Senesi looks like an absolute cheat code for the games going forward. The ceiling is very high. He's very well owned. I think I'm exposing myself to a lot by not picking just a very, very good player. So this version has Sanchez in goal, Timber, Rodon, and Gabriel, Mukiele, and Richard. So what you're seeing over here is two 4.0 defenders. The rotation is not bad. One of them can be first sub every week, right? Because I don't think Krupi Jr.'s time in the squad will be very long term. Once Evan Nielsen is back, he's likely going to be third sub most week. Is it great? No, because Rodon and Mukiele, as I showed you earlier, fixtures are quite bad for the weeks that are coming. So I don't necessarily want to rely on them as my first sub every week in case of any injuries and suspensions. But tougher fixtures could mean more DEFCON. It's not the end of the world. I have to. There could be gifts this season. Maybe we're undervaluing the 4.0 guys. In midfield, Saka, Enzo. Enzo's projections are a bit lower. You see, they'll be updated because we did see him play midweek, so that's fine. Bruno Fernandes, Semenyo, Mateta, Haaland, and Krupi Jr. So the idea here, again, you see I've got 6 penalty takers and Krupi Jr. with on the bench is Sar, Mukiele, and Richards. It's decent, but again, it doesn't have Munoz, who I really like. It doesn't have Senesi, who I really like. So there are some holes over here I'm not entirely happy with, which I want to plug in. But this is essentially not a 3-4-3 version. It's more of a 3-5-2 version. 3-4-3 is only for this week, right? So this is the version I'm really liking now and what I'm bust on. So this is a 4-4-2 version. It's got a similar setup with Sanchez, Timber, and Gabriel. But what I've done is I've moved Rodon. You can actually see the changes on the screen. I moved Sar to King. I moved Richards to Munoz. I've gone Rodon to Senesi. So what I've done over here is I've sort of replaced the Palace attacker I had in the previous version for Sar instead of Munoz. I've downgraded him to King and I moved Rodon to Senesi. So it's given me two players I really wanted, as I mentioned to you guys in the previous slides. So Timber, Senesi, Gabriel will start this week. Saka, Enzo, Bruno, Semenyo, same as the last one. Mateta, Haaland, and Krupi. On the bench would be Munoz, King, and Mukiele. So again, quite similar. Not many changes. Let's look now. Since this is a draft, I am the most set on. Let me look at that. How it look the week after in game week 10. Again, you'd have Sanchez playing. Timber, Mukiele would come in for Senesi. Gabriel, Munoz, Saka, Enzo, Bruno, Semenyo, Mateta, Haaland. So going forward, most weeks Senesi will just be coming in for Mukiele, King, and Krupi would be my bench. Now, what about the bench boost, though, if you would ask? Again, bench boost is not a chip I want to dictate my team setting on. I don't want to let the structure going with a very heavy eighth attacker or a very strong team overall sort of cripple my squad long term, because then I'd be itching to get the money out. It's not something I'd want to do. Maybe if I get 2 to 3 points, maybe I get 10 points for my bench boost. That is just basically like 3 points, 2 points odd from my keeper, few DEFCON guys, 10 to 11 points. I'd be more than happy with that because I want my money in the 11. That's generally how I play. So this again, BB11 will have Sanchez, Senesi, Timber, Gabriel, Munoz. And this is a squad structure long term. It's again very, very good, right? Because you get 3 very good attacking defenders, Timber, Gabriel, Munoz, who all have goal and assist threat. Then you have Senesi also in there, I think is a DEFCON monster. You get 6 penalty takers, Saka, Enzo, Bruno, Semenyo, Mateta, Haaland. And this year I'm all about the route to points, and shout out to Walsh, who was on this very early, right? I got the DEFCON guys. I've got 6 penalty takers, and what I can do potentially, I don't have Sar in this. I'm not happy with what I see from Enzo. He can become Sar or Ndai in a couple of weeks. The flexibility, as Pras mentioned on this with this one on the pod, is a little bit limited because ultimately you wouldn't want to sell any of these players, raise money. But is that really a bad thing? I'm picking players I don't want to sell. Ultimately, injuries or something will happen, and then I will make the moves if I need it. But why not pick a players who I think are very good for the long term, who have the routes to points? I really like this version. Ticks all the boxes for me. This is another version I've made with no Bruno, so having beefed up the bench a little bit on this one. It's got Pope instead of Sanchez. Now you see over here, you've got Sar, Mateta, and Munoz on the bench. I've got Rodon in there. Bit of overkill. I think you could play Mateta over Rodon because I think West Ham will be better against Leeds. Playing away from home might suit them. They do have players like your Bowen, Somerville who can do damage. So, over here, would I necessarily be playing Rodon over Mateta? Probably not. I'd put Mateta in. But so what's happened over here is essentially I've sold Bruno for Ndai and upgraded King to Sar. Maintained a similar structure as the previous one. But what this essentially means that my first sub every week is going to be one of Senesi or Ndai. You guys know how I play. I don't necessarily like to have benching decisions every week. Because again, this is strong, very strong first line. Because again, you go with Timber, Nessie, Gabriel, Staka, Enzo, Endai, Semenyo, Haaland, Sar, Mateta, Munoz. These guys, you'd want to play them every week. So most like the benching decision, I think is just going to drive me nuts. Could be a problem, could not be a problem. You could argue that any injuries off, you could use that bench depth. You have the bench boost to play, but I just think the root 2 points are a bit better in the previous version. And I think also a big draw of going with something like a Bruno and Saka, right? Now, if I want to sell just one of them, raise money for a Liverpool player, it's quite easy. Now, if I want to get Salah, I could sell both of them. The move is self-contained. You could go Salah to a 4.5, 4.6 midfielder. I don't need money from anywhere else in that case. So it's sort of more future-proofing it a little bit. Sorry, I went ahead. So yeah, that's about it in terms of the drafts. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Hope you found it useful. If you have any comments on which one you prefer, do let me know. Again, I'll be updating my comments and news with anything from the press conferences. The biggest curveball could really be if he says that Krupi is back next week. Sort of diminishes his appeal for me because I do want him for a bench boost in 11, in which case I think Bruno might be the downgrade. I'd probably move him to a Voltemade, do something in defense. I'd still probably get a Munoz and I still stick to that 4-4 three. It might become a 4-3-3 setup in that case. So I need to look into that a little bit more. But again, the Krupi Junior news is primarily what I'm really waiting on. Everything else is fine. Potentially, if he says Isaac is out for 5 to 6 weeks or even a longer period, something I could look into. But keep in mind that right now, 1 month is 2 game weeks with the next international break. So I'm not sure if that will influence my decision. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's been a fun week. I'm glad it's sort of a shorter one from a Monday to Friday. I don't know how the guys do this over international break. It would drive me mad. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. The guys have already put out the other two team selections. So if you haven't seen that, do check that out. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.